Click the bell icon to get latest videos from Ekeeda.
Hello friends, today we will discuss about the database languages that is used to access and specify the particular database system. There are mainly two types of languages that we will describe today. One is DDL or data definition language, another is DML or data manipulation language. DDL is the language that is used to specify the database schema, and DML or manipulation language is the language that is used to express the queries and access the information on a retrieval. First, we will discuss about the DML. Data manipulation language or DML, as we say, that is used to retrieve information on a particular relation and to manipulate that data on a request. So there are four types of this data manipulation language or DML. First is the retrieval of information, that is used to retrieve information that is stored in a database. Next is the insertion, that is inserting a particular data into a database. Next is the modification, that is modify or updating a data on a particular database. And another is deletion, that is deletion on a particular data based on some constraints or ifs that is specified and stored in a database. Now to access and modify and then delete and insert of a particular data in the database, so that we can see that this is information related. So all the attributes are getting information on a particular domain. So this type of domain and integrities needed to be maintained while maintaining a DML. So when DML is maintaining, so we can see that there are many type of constraints and the data along with that constraints that is needed to be checked. So DMLs are specified on this physical level and view level that is getting used with the user or the communicator. So the main use of the DML is that ease of the data while accessing from the database. Now the database is getting access from the user side, so we can say that the user can manipulate it and according to the choice and need on that particular enterprise. So we have to maintain of the certain conditions. First type of DML that is conditioned is a procedural DML. In a procedural DML, the user needs to specify that what data is needed to get fetched and how to fetch that data. Next one is a declarative DML. In a declarative DML, the user needs to specify what data that is used to getting fetched, but not how to fetch that data. So obviously the declarative DML is much more easy to learn and use than the procedural DML, as we can leave it on the database system that how to fetch the data from the system. And it is entirely decision of this DBMS that how it will use and manipulate that data. The user will want only the data that is needed and not how to get that data. But in procedural DML, although the user has to maintain that what data and how to get that data. So we need two levels of abstractions here, and there are many languages that is associated with the DML. So the particular retrieval of information is known as a query processing. And the part of the language on DML that handle with this query processing is often known as a query language. And a query language is that is provided by this DBMS of Oracle, that is a commercial use, is known as SQL or structured query language. Now the query language or the DML is altered simultaneously. So whenever this query or the retrieval of information is there, so DML is getting used, or if there is any possibility, so we can modify the data on a particular enterprise. Say for an example that we are taking that the salary is needed to be getting increased on a particular employee so that he is getting a maturity. So it is part of the DML on that database. So that is all for the DML or the database manipulation language. The next language is the data definition language. In the data definition language, we are specifying the actual database schema. So when we are specifying the schema, that is mean we are specifying the structure of the storage on that particular database, what are the data types of the data on that enterprise that is needed to getting entered and stored. So we must say that this DDL is having some constraints. So the DDL constraints can be of arbitrary type. Then arbitrary type of data is not useful because they can be handled by anyone. So we must imply some integrity constraints on that DDL. So when we are implying this integrity constraints, they are of many types. The first one is the domain constraint. When we are specifying a data type or an attribute or an enterprise, then we can say that a particular domain is only allowed to enter on the data type. Say for a company which has its branches over the cities of Kolkata, Mumbai and Chennai only. And now it has created the attribute city with a domain constraint of Kolkata, Mumbai and Chennai. So when there is an input other than these three cities, so it will be violated and causing a domain constraint violation. Because the attribute has got particularly that much domain that is getting inputted by an attribute. So whenever a user wants to put information like say in Delhi, so it will be a domain constraint violation. The next type of constraint that is an integrity constraint is the consistency constraint. Say, for an example, as we have described earlier, that a university is maintaining account for each department and the account for each department can never be negative. So when we are putting the information on this type of constraint, that is a consistency. It is maintaining the consistency of the accounts that it cannot be negative in anyhow. So whenever there is a negative balance of updation or the modification, even if any insertion of the data or the data type is maintaining, so there will be a violation on this consistency. The next type of integrity constraint that is derived from this of the data redundancy and this consistency and domain constraint is the assertion constraint. In assertion constraint is a constraint that is every time needed to be satisfied whenever the data schema is getting updated or modified. Now say this domain constraint and consistency constraints are special types of this assertion constraints. Say for an example, we are expressing that the university student cannot have more than 5 courses in each department. So this needed to be expressed in an assertion. Now whenever a student is getting attached with more than 5 courses in a department, so it will be violated on an assertion. The next type of DDL constraint integrity is the authorization. As we have mentioned that no users can use out of its boundary or limitation. So every user is not permitted every access on a database system. Therefore, we need to restrict the use of particular data. So we can do it with the help of authorization. The basic and first type of authorization that a user can get is the read authorization. In read authorization, we can read only the data but cannot modify it. Now next comes this modify authorization. In modify authorization, we can modify a particular data but cannot delete it. The next and higher level of authorization is a delete authorization. In this way, we can read the data, modify the data, or can delete the data. Now, based on a particular user and its need, it can be given none, a single, or a combination of this type of authorization. So, these are all the integrity constraints that is to be maintained on a DDL to avoid the arbitrary type of the exclamation. Now, as we can say that the data about the data is called the metadata, and this DDL is all about constraining this metadata. So it is generally like inputting some statements or instructions and then outputting the actual metadata that is to be stored on a data dictionary. And it is hidden from the actual users because the user is no of use of the particular database schema. And there are only administrator use, and this administrator can only update or change this database schema on a particular DDL information. So that is the basic information on the database languages, that is DDL and DML. Thank you for watching this video. Stay tuned with Ekeeda and subscribe to Ekeeda.